Thank you for joining me on today's episode of the Moms Who Know podcast, the podcast for moms who know that when they take care of themselves, they can take better care of everyone else. Now, as you're listening to this, we are right around the corner from a new year. What do you want for yourself in this new year? So many people set New Year's resolutions to lose weight and to get healthy and to get fit. And then the next year, they set that same New Year's resolution again. What if you could actually see real change in your body this year? And that change could come not just as a physical change, but as a change in your mind, in the way that you think about food, the way that you think about your body, in really being grateful for the way your body is and learning to treat it well. That's what mind-body transformation is all about. Yes, it will help you lose weight. It will help you feel better in your own skin and fit in your clothes. All of that. But beyond that, it will help you learn to love and treat your body well so that what you accomplish in these 3 months of working with me will last. So that next year, you'll have a totally different New Year's resolution and can get on with your purpose in life and in motherhood. If that sounds like what you're looking for, please join me. The program starts January 1st, so hurry and sign up. You can get all the details at momswhoknowpodcast.com/mind body. Today's episode is part of a new series that we are calling Couples Who Know. This is a series that my husband James and I are doing and hope to be doing about once a month. You'll be hearing from us on all things marriage. So let's get to the show. Hello and welcome to the Moms Who Know podcast. I'm your host, Chanel Nielsen, and I'm joined today by my husband, James. James, thank you for being on the call.
Wife, good to be with you.
Yeah, we have had many attempts at doing this podcast, been interrupted by kids. We've had technology issues. We've had all kinds of things. And so here we are, and we are ready to talk about this topic, which is growing personally and growing as a couple. And we've been married for 18 years. We're almost to our 18-year anniversary here. And we love talking about marriage. We love being married. And we hope we have some good things to share with you. So, James, to start off, I would love to just dive right into our topic and hear from you your thoughts on how personal growth affects growth as a couple.
Yeah, you bet. So I think that when you're growing personally, you're going to have more to share with your spouse. So just think of it. Think of what you're excited about right now or what you've been reading. Maybe you've read a good book or you're doing a training at work, something that you're excited about. That's going to trickle over into your home life. I try to separate both of them, both home and work life. But when you are growing or excelling at something, that's going to give you things to talk about. I was going to say, we try to talk every night, right? Would you agree with that?
Right.
You
Oh,
know, and
definitely.
and we'll hold hands and we'll sit together on the couch or just be touching on the couch, shoulder to shoulder, close together, and that's our time to talk. You know, and especially when the kids are to bed, it's just quiet, and that's when we're there. And I know that when I'm learning and growing, that's when I want to talk to you about what's going on with my life. And there have been times in my life, and I think probably it's safe to say with yours too, that where you're not growing maybe as much, there's just not a lot to talk about. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think that's such a great point, and it's so interesting because when you are growing and learning new things, and that can come in a lot of different forms, but you do have this excitement. You want to share it. And so, it's fun because I have ideas to share with you and you have ideas to share with me, and we're talking about things and we're passionate about things. And it's
Mhm.
much more fun than the opposite, which is, what'd you do today? Oh, nothing. Just kind of bored and stale. And yet there's this excitement that comes. Now, there's a second piece in here that I want to make sure that we draw out because you mentioned it, but this is part of how your personal growth affects your couple growth. And that is taking that time every day, if possible, to connect. Because you could be having these awesome experiences and reading these books and doing these trainings. But if you're not then sharing that with your spouse and connecting, then you're kind of on two different tracks there.
You bet. I agree with that totally. And I was just thinking about when you were saying that the synergy that can be created when you are both excited about something. And it's almost like I can remember conversations we've had where we're almost talking over each other because we're both excited about something. And I'll have to like sit there and like really, really focus on what you're saying because I have something to share. So those are fun times, and I think that that is something that happens every so often. But I'm going to totally admit to the listeners out there that there have been times when I have felt very, very stale, and especially when things are going on in your personal life. Um, I think I'll point out that we just lost my mom, and that's been a really really big challenge for me in personal growth because when you're sad sometimes it's a little bit harder to grow for me anyway for me. And
Oh,
so
I
I
think
think
for
that
everyone. Yeah.
yeah, okay. So I think that just being totally aware of what's going on with your spouse, always giving them the benefit of the doubt, and just know what they're up against. Because I think it can be disappointing maybe for one spouse to have all these things to share, and you're like, come on, like, are you gonna talk to me? I've heard that. I've heard I have five sisters, and so sometimes I get to hear things from them, and I have also talked to other ladies in counseling sessions before about like, I just want my spouse to talk to me, and why aren't they talking to me? Don't they have anything to say? And I don't know. Sometimes you just need to be aware of what's going on and maybe talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking about you mentioned times when you felt stale, and I think that for me, a hard time when I really felt like I didn't have anything to talk about, and maybe some of the listeners can relate to this, is when I was a young mom and I had just kids at home and I didn't have any really hobbies or anything outside of the kids, so I would exercise, I would clean the house, I would take care of the kids, and that was my day. And so, I'd want to have these great conversations with you. And yet I felt like, what's there to talk about? Well, I changed a lot of diapers today, or the baby did this cute thing. And beyond that, there's nothing. And so that lack of growth then
Right.
does affect what you have to talk about. It affects that excitement level, and you're just, not much to say. Turn on the TV, right? It's not
It
as fun.
does.
And then I would
I
contrast that with I love it when we just get talking and when we stay up late. Even James will agree. I go to bed early, man.
Oh my
I am
goodness.
tired. I'm ready for bed.
Yes. I
Yes.
know it's a
Okay.
really good
We don't need.
conversation. I was gonna say I know it's a really good conversation when you're okay with staying up late. Like usually it's like, okay, I'm
Yes.
ready to go to bed, and I know I have 5 minutes to get it together, and like we're going to bed. But yeah, when it's a good conversation, it'll be like, wow, okay, we're staying up. This is good. We can do this. So, yeah.
Yeah, but it's so fun. It's like, oh, I don't want this to end. So we stay up and we talk, and then I have a little more energy. It doesn't mean on the other nights that I don't want to talk to you. I'm just a girl who needs her sleep. So
I hear you. I
that's
hear
all
you.
that means.
I
Yeah.
was thinking about something else when you were talking about when we were first married. I remember those days well, trying to start my career and being excited and telling you what's going on. You're like, yeah, we walk around the block, like, and it was a point where we only had one car too, so you were stuck.
Right.
Anyway, fast forward 18 years, and I'm thinking about our son Tyler. And so Tyler's our 10-year-old, and Tyler really, really wants a dog, right? And Chanel and I are just not dog people. So
No, it's never
I'm
gonna happen.
you're
Sorry,
gonna see
Tyler.
where I'm going with it. Yeah, I know. So let me tell you where I'm going with this. So Tyler wants to have this dog, and we sign up for this thing called Yaps. It's where you can take a dog for a walk, right? And we're out there, and Tyler gets this dog that's just totally not cooperative, right? The dog is just sitting there. The person's trying to help. I don't have experience with dogs. I don't know what to do.
And you should say it was just the two of you, just you and Tyler.
Yes, yes, yes. So it was Tyler and I, but there were helpers, okay, going with like making sure everything's going okay that worked at the place. You with me?
Yeah.
So, okay. So we get this dog and it's just not budging. And I'm just thinking of how excited Tyler is. And sometimes you can just relate that to one spouse like being excited and wanting to grow and doing this thing that they're really into. And then the partner, in this case, in Tyler's case, the dog is just not budging, right? Just not moving an inch. And like my heart's breaking for this kid, right? Because he's just like totally been looking forward to this thing. Dog's not moving. And I don't know, maybe some of you are can relate to that in your relationships, just like this is not going. So this is what happened. This is the interesting thing that happened. The helper came around and we were at the very end of the walk, right? We're lagging in the back. And they're like, you know what? You just might need to pick up your dog and start walking and scratching it behind the ears and just talking to the dog. And I'm like, wow, okay. So Tyler picks up the dog and he's talking to the dog and getting to know the dog. Um, just fast forward, we by the end of this experience, it was a very long walk, at least it was for me. This dog is totally walking for Tyler, right? He won the dog's heart and they're walking and I'm just thinking, wow, this is so relatable. So relatable. If you show deep interest, I'm really convinced of this. If you show deep interest in your spouse, even if they have nothing to say, right? If you let them know that you really want to talk to them and share with them, I think you'll be able to price something. Now, I think that there are harder cases out there than maybe I'm aware of. Because some of you might be saying, "Yeah, right." But I think that that's a start anyway. Would you agree, babe, that just
Uh,
showing deep interest is important?
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that story that you shared. That's so awesome. I think there's so much there to, if people ponder that and just so much relevance, like you said, to marriage. And, I think that a lot of times it's easy to want to say, okay, my husband is this deadbeat dog. Just forget it. Why did I even want to come on this walk?
Yeah.
Where instead, if you can carry the load, and what I mean by that is pick up the dog, and sometimes that balance in marriage is going to be off and you're going to be the one doing most of the work, and that's not sustainable. I'm not saying it should, sorry, you got a bum deal and that should be your role all the time, but for short periods of time, like you mentioned earlier, there are times when you're grieving or you're having a hard time at work, or there are these things that make it hard on one spouse, and if the other spouse can recognize that and take on a little more and let that their spouse just have the space for whatever they need the space for, then eventually, hopefully, that spouse is going to get up and walk the block with you.
I think that's important and so true. I think that recognizing when your spouse needs space is really important. And like you said, it's not sustainable, but giving the space when it's needed is very valuable, I'll say. One other thing I wanted to point out um, about wanting to grow is just an example in our marriage. I've seen you be very excited about things at times when I wasn't maybe growing as much as I would like. And I think it's inspirational to see your spouse excited about something. It is for me. It absolutely is. When I see that you are on fire about something, it makes me one excited for you, and two makes me want to have something like that to where I can be excited about. So I think that the two are totally related. The two being your personal growth and your growth with your spouse. I think they're totally related. When you're growing as an individual, you're growing together as a couple, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's two parts of that. So you're growing as an individual, which helps your marriage be stronger. But then the fact that you're growing as an individual also helps your spouse want to grow as an
Yes.
individual.
Yes.
So there's personal growth that leads to more personal growth, and there's personal growth that leads to couple growth.
Yes.
So there's both. So, okay, I can imagine some listeners as they're hearing this saying, well, my spouse is just not interested in growing and they are in one of these hard times for whatever reason that might be. They're not growing, but I want to grow. How do I keep my marriage strong, even when we're out of balance? Any thoughts on that, on how to do that?
Yes. Yes. Let me just say one thing before I try to answer that. I did some research before this podcast about what the internet had to say about if one spouse is growing and one is not. And a lot of the feedback, a lot of the noise was it's time to move on. And a lot of it, and I'm like, well, maybe that's just in a relationship that you're not married they're talking about. And a lot of it, sadly, was not. It was, yeah, I've been married for 20 years and all these experiences, I'm reading through all these threads. And a lot of the feedback was it's just time to move on. If they're not going to grow with you, then just leave. And that just made me a little sad. It made me sad because oh, that's they're missing it. It can be so great. And I understand. I totally get it that there are going to be situations where, maybe the relationship is so unhealthy and so bad that might be the case to move on. I don't know everybody's situation, but I would just hope that we would try to fix it, to try to, like I was talking about earlier, dig deep, that deep interest. So anyway, I wanted to share that's kind of what it was. But my thoughts on if one person is not growing, that's what you're getting at, right? Sorry, I went off on a tangent.
I'm so glad you brought that up about divorce, because that just comes up so frequently. I think that that's just the culture and the world we live in. I see it on Facebook groups that I'm on all the time. As soon as, what someone will say, oh, my husband has this problem, and people just jump in and say, leave him, divorce,
Yeah.
it's just so quick to just say, end it. And so I'm glad that you are bringing that out. Of course, there are times when that might be the appropriate answer, but I think that, we are big advocates of marriage. We love being married. I just know how good a marriage can be, and I want that for everybody. And so I want to, in all the things that we share, make sure people know that even if it's rough and even if you're going through a hard time, that maybe there's something else. Maybe if you try some of these things, that things will get better and there's hope. So to the question, back to that then. So if the answer isn't leaving, when one spouse isn't growing, what are some things you can do to still keep your marriage strong?
Well, back to Tyler's dog walking experience, right? So one of the things was Tyler didn't want to hold the dog the entire walk. It was a long walk, and so we had a break, and it was just that. It was a break for Tyler and it was a break for the dog, right? And they played. And so I think that is so important with your spouse. You need to play. You need to have fun. That's just the beginning. I think you can stress out and spend a lot of time thinking about I'm not growing, this is bad, or maybe even thoughts of jealousy. My wife's growing or my husband's growing and I'm not, and they're just doing their own thing, and it could just turn into all these different bad thoughts, and it just this ugly spiral downward. So I would just say start with playing and have fun. Are you guys going on date nights? Are you doing things together where you can both grow? Because I think there is some danger in one spouse totally growing and just it seems like they are on this rocket ship, and that can be a good thing for them. But if they've totally dusted you, totally left you behind, that's a problem. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just not good. So
Yeah.
yeah, so we don't
Yeah.
want to leave them totally behind is what I'm getting at, and have that time to play.
Yes. Now, I think that if the person listening to this podcast, if they feel like their spouse is growing and they're not the one growing, then there's more that you can think of to do. Like, okay, well then I'm going to do some personal growth. It's harder maybe if it's you're growing and you see your spouse not growing because there's only so much you can do. You can't make someone want to change,
You're
right?
right.
But I
You're
love
right.
your idea of play together, of take a break. I mean, and you know, it's funny because even that those words, take a break, if you were reading that online, like, oh, take a break, separate. No, no. Take a break from the serious stuff, play, reconnect, have fun together.
You bet.
And yeah, and then that connection happens regardless of your personal goals and your personal growth.
I think it's so true. I think one helpful thing might be to remember what you guys started talking about when you were dating. Um, and I realize you changed. I think back to our courtship. I mean, Chanel was a silly, silly girl. I don't know. It was very attractive to me. She just did so many silly things. But I'll expound on that so people don't think they're not wondering. So don't worry. Listen. Um, I just mean that you love to have fun and just do silly things where we would, we'd do pretend stuff. Like we would do a parade together. It was just silly, silly stuff. So what connects you guys? What's a fun thing to do? Surprise dates. I'm thinking of the Redlands Bowl, one of our recent activities, just kind of a surprise thing where we had a theme with dinner and going out, and you've planned lots of things, random love notes, just the basic standard answers of stuff you guys know you should be doing. But hopefully that's a starting point for you. Think back on what really connected you guys in the first place, or what you saw your spouse doing to grow at a previous time other than the time they're not right now. Make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So, in all that we've talked about, and you brought out some great tips just now of having fun together. Any other thoughts on growing together and growing as a couple, strengthening the marriage? Just some thoughts on that you would share.
Sure. I would just say realize it's a journey. There are going to be ups and downs to this journey for you and for your spouse and together. So don't be so hard on yourself. Don't be hard on your spouse. Be their cheerleader. I would say that that's really important. Show that deep concern. Try to connect. If they're not growing or you're not growing, you can ask for help. If it's you that's not growing, that's just something that came to mind. Ask for help. I've done that before. I'm with you recently, in fact. How I feel like I'm not growing. How can I do this? And then listen. And you had some really good ideas for me. So that's what I'd say in a nutshell.
Yeah, those are some good thoughts. That was actually a cool conversation that we had because I had been doing this training and learning some new things about personal growth and about setting goals and things. And um, James had asked me like, well, what can I do and how can I do this too? And then we were able to sit down together and I was able to teach him, and he is very humble and teachable and willing to listen, to these ideas and then put them into practice. And so that is one way, is just having that conversation, opening up that conversation. Another thing is growing together, just in talking a little bit earlier about divorce and about, these hard times you go through. I remember a long time ago, I had a friend whose husband had an affair, and she was ready to leave him. She was going to leave him. No, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. He was going to leave her, and she begged him to stay and wanted him to stay. And she was a very just religious woman and had a deep faith and wanted the marriage to work. And I saw her a year or two after this had happened, and she said that their marriage was better than ever and things were good. And just share that because that's an extreme example, right? That's one that the internet would say right away, just he had an affair, leave him. But she wanted to make it work, and she was willing to grow together as a couple. And then they've had cool experiences because of that. And their marriage has grown stronger. And so I think that there's this element of wanting your marriage to work and wanting to grow together as a couple that counts for a lot.
I agree 100%. There are miracles out there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, I hope that this has been helpful to you guys. I think that there are definitely things that you can put into practice to build yourself to grow and develop and bring your spouse along with you and grow together as a couple. So, James, thanks for everything you shared today.
Hey, good to be with you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to Moms Who Know.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Moms Who Know podcast, Couples Who Know. For show notes, be sure to visit momswhoknowpodcast.com, and for details on mind-body transformation, momswhoknowpodcast.com/mind-body.